by the way, I'm fifth down in this hierarchy. I'm the last person that's going to be on the COG, and I sought that out. But I would say that the idea of having the public participate in the technical elements of this, where people are trying to figure out the engineering and design aspects of things, may be a bit more cumbersome. And I think we have to understand the difference between a technical meeting and a policy meeting, and make sure that all matters of policy and setting the priorities and directing staff to do the technical work, those are two different purposes, and the TAC discussion in this document misses that. To me, the TAC has to have public meetings. I'd make the distinction within this. It opens it up, that's good. It opens it up completely, and that makes no sense at all. So policy versus carrying out administrative actions, those are two different things. Regarding the mission of COG, I believe that the best mission of the COG is to raise funds, which it's done successfully for a long time. It's to help in planning and cooperate. Transportation is just one part of planning, but I don't think we're overly staffed in the county planning department on transportation stuff, and I would hope that the Public Works Department, planning, and the COG would help in that process and find some seamless way to not overlap or be redundant, but actually be productive and collaborative in nature. And so those are the things I think that at COG are best at: planning and raising funds to carry out the plans. I think that the county and the city need to be lead agency on implementing plans. And I think that the mission of COG and the mission of the counties should be reflective of where one ends and the other leaves off. But make no mistake about it, there will be times when, just because of staffing and skill sets and availability, that there may be some ebb and flow to that, and writing it in cement is not exactly a positive step either if the problems are relational. We've talked about the Organization and Procedures Manual. I'm on a lot of other JPAs. And we've been rewriting all kinds of documents. And I would have to say that our JPA agreements have to do with the structure and decision-making and how the counties and other agencies will participate together, how they'll make decisions. I do not think that the day-to-day operations, an operations manual, should be part of a JPA agreement. In that regard, I agree wholeheartedly with Marita's comments on that. On the role of the executive director versus the admin committee, I've participated in admin committees in Amador County, as I recall, some time ago, and in an agency this tiny. Again, it's just an overlay, and if a board comes to feel that it has a personnel issue, then it should deal with that head-on and directly. It should not be creating a Rube Goldberg structural design around that question. On the dissolution process, 30 days is an invitation to chaos. And in my view, 6 months is sometimes not even long enough, and in some cases, for instance, in our ambulance world, we look at, I think a year, is it, that if one agency wants to get out of the arrangement, yes, it takes a year. So the 30-day thing is precipitous and unnecessary and self-destructive. I would hope we wouldn't go there. On the, well, let's see. If we ever transitioned backward, took another trip in Mr. Peabody's Wayback Machine and decided we wanted to do an LTA, again, LTC, excuse me, not LTA. If we wanted to, I'm going way back. My thinking is that, again, the transition should be seamless, and this document appears to call for a wholesale slaughter upon transition, and I'm just not sure that's a cool idea, but I also think it's more commentary on people's beliefs about staffing and personnel issues again. So we're mixed, again, we keep mixing one thing. There's a goal, maybe there are goals about that. Let's have that discussion straight on, and in that regard, I think it is the board of the COG that must conduct any personnel reviews. It is not our business. We get way beyond our scope by intervening from this position into another agency's business. In fact, while that agency is supposed to be representing both Angels and us, it is a creature unto itself. It's by our creation that we did a JPA, and there are certain functions and reviews that must be done by that organization, for better or worse. And that gets me into a real central question. If we have problems with the board we've created, what are those problems? Is it because there's too many public people? Too much public participation? I don't think so. I think that having 3 is right and appropriate. I favor that. Now the question is, what are their skills? Who appoints them? Does the COG replicate itself? Does the public have input on it? What's our selection process? And maybe we can do some work around that. I don't know. Maybe there's issues of conflict. And maybe we need to outline, if you have projects where you're going to become the beneficiary of a COG project, and if you are playing a role in either government or business in which that might be inherently conflictive, maybe we need to have some kind of limitations or borders that we don't cross on that line. So how we do that might be outlined, and we might get some protocols and procedures around this that could take some of the pressure off what seems to be whether the public's involved or not. I don't think the public is irresponsible. The public serves on all kinds of committees. In fact, the public has written some of the best documents in planning that we have before us in some aspects. And the more the public's involved, the less chance we'll have the discussions about where are we being transparent, are we sharing information, or are we having a closed club, a closed-end operation that can't be penetrated and is inscrutable to the average citizen. So I do believe that it's important to have public participation. But again, I think that can be framed and that there can be accountability. Accountability to the public trust. Accountability to public interest. Accountability to non-conflictive participation. How you guarantee that, that's a neat trick, and I'd sure like to see the level of creativity that went into writing this document moved in that direction. Terms of office for CCOG members takes a year or two just to get oriented. Why would we term limit somebody before they even get up to speed? I don't get it.
Wait a minute, Steve. They're not term limited. They can be reappointed. The term is for 1 year. They're not term limited out in 1 year.
Okay, that's a fair clarification. I thank you for that. But why should we be appointing them on that level? I would think that some security of appointment allows what I think is the other important aspect of public participation, which is independence from political intervention. And that, to me, that's why we have public members on. Actually, some of our elected officials have spent a lot of time arguing more on who's on first than on the projects themselves. We've argued more about process than we have on product. In fact, I'm still trying to figure out what some of the products are, because our dialogue on these things have been so overwhelmed by issues of personnel, relations, and process. So those are things I think we ought to spend more time on in resolving those. Reserves and matches for the feds. Well, last I checked, the county reserves, public works reserves, and COG reserves, if you put them all together, wouldn't accomplish even fixing the roads in District 2. All right, and I do believe there are federal monies that are going to require significant reserves, and gee, if we've got two sources, For a match, that can't hurt us, and I don't, I also don't think it's good to hoard your reserves needlessly, but if it's part of a plan, and I leave it to COG, which has its own organization and own dynamic, to figure out how, in conjunction with city and county reserves, the best opportunities for capitalizing on that can come. To summarize, I want to see reforms to the old COG document. I want to see them in areas that actually make it work better, facilitate cooperation between the city and the county, deal with questions of personnel and accountability, perfect how appointments are made from the public, and maybe we can improve that with some thinking and public input. I do think we should take this opportunity here today, having heard so much from so many people, to ask to set up an appropriate committee to complete this process. But what I would be asking for is not a putsch, not a political agenda, not a complete restructuring of something that for the most part has worked well, not an invitation for good people to leave this county, but in fact an invitation to get on with business after having undergone some pretty tough, tumultuous times. Let's get back to product. Let's get back to results. And let's see whether we can negotiate agreeably in a way that involves the two organizations that form the basis for the JPA, but does not leave out the very JPA they created.
Thank you, Mr. Womansky. Mr. Tuffanelli.
Well, I got to say to start with that I disagree with Steve about it being personal. Several members of the public stood up, and one of them specifically named names, saying that this was a personal agenda, is why this was brought forward. And it just goes to show how misinformed they can be. Here's the document. I had zero input on this, none. This is not a document that I had anything to do with. We sat at a study session here with 3 city council members and 5 board of supervisors that all agreed that there needed to be some changes. Staff worked on that. We had 2 staff members that came up and recommended this. They worked on it along with the CAO, along with the city. And this is what they came up with. I didn't have nothing to do with this. I had nothing to do. I agreed that we needed to have changes in it. I did not write one word in this. None of the changes were done by me. So the personnel about Tom and I having a personal agenda is totally wrong. I have no agenda. I have no personal feelings against Mr. McSorley and COG. If it goes back to the roots of a community plan, which several of the members that stood up and talked about were in disagreement on what happened there, I didn't kill that plan. I could have killed that plan. That plan is not dead. It continued forward. It's going to be presented, the documents, to this board. So if you want to say I have a personal agenda against you, you're wrong. Do you disagree with me? Yes, but this is America, and we all have the right to disagree on certain issues. So that being said...
Can I say I'd like to...
Marty, no, please. Marty, please, thank you.
I had nothing to do with this. Now, we go back to what 2 and 1, where everybody keeps pointing and thinking that is something that was done on a personal agenda. That is totally erroneous. That was what the city put forth. Originally, from my understanding, it was proposed by the county to be 5 and 1, and the city did not agree to that. The city came back and said they wanted 2 and 1. It had nothing to do with a personal agenda. That's what they suggested. I did not meet with the city. I went to a city council meeting. Tom met with the county, with the city, like he said, his constituents, and came back and gave his comments to the CAO, to Tom Garcia. I don't know if Mr. White was involved in that. I know the county council was involved in this. But I saw the document at the same time. Marita saw the document. Steve saw the document. Russ handed me it. He came and got my final copy. I didn't get my copy until Saturday evening of this final document. So I've had the same amount of time as anybody else to go through this thing. I will say this, though. A number of things have been said. One is, as I brought up at a study session and at a city council meeting and at this board, we all agree, including the executive director, that some changes needed to be made to this document. We're all in agreement on that. There's no personal agenda involved in that. It's been transparent all along. I will say this as far as arguing over the projects, and this is a problem that I see, and I'm seeing it, is the fact that this is your county seat. We are your elected representatives from your specific districts. 2 of us sit on a COG board. Doesn't make 3 of us. It takes 3 of us to do anything here in the county. But there was 5 of us that wholeheartedly agreed on August 24th to an MOU brought forth regarding the Rim Trail project, to which the lead agency would be this county. I attended a COG meeting on September 1st. Mr. McSorley was here present on August 24th. He knows exactly what was voted on, exactly what the MOU said. The T projects were brought and discussed at the September 1st COG meeting. Mr. McSorley did not bring to that board. He sat right on that MOU and what 5 members of this board voted on, saying who was going to run that project. He then led a contract afterwards for engineering on that project. He did not turn it over to this county. Tim, that is true.
No, it's not, Gary. It's not true.
This project has not been turned over to this county. You say that this county can change it, we can take control of anything. We're telling you by a 5-0 vote that project needs to be run by the county. We want to run that that project, and it needs to be turned over. It hasn't been. It wasn't even discussed at that meeting. It wasn't even brought up. The executive director did not even bring it to that board to be even voted on, saying here's an MOU the Board of Supervisors voted on. He just didn't bring it up at all. He went right through those projects and didn't discuss it. That's a problem. In my opinion, that is a problem. And that's what needs to be addressed. I think that's some of the frustrations that Mr. Tryon is encountering when he talks about the COG and when he's there sitting on the COG board. It's the frustrations of it. Mr. Caldwell brought up that there's never been fighting over project. I bring this up right now. There's fighting over this Rim Trail project right now, Mr. Caldwell, between these 2 agencies. This agency and COG are fighting over that project. Like I just brought up, 5-0 vote. That is fighting over projects. Talked about the many people involved in producing this document. It was brought up by Mr. Ellis that Mr. Tryon made a motion on the COG board for these T projects. Well, I guess if Mr. Tryon or Marita or somebody else, one of the other COG board members, wants to bring up a motion that says, earlier today we had a session on the improvements here on Mountain Ranch Road. If somebody at COG, one of those board members, wants to bring up a motion there and gets 4 votes to take over that project, does that mean COG takes over that project? There's not 3 board members there to do so, and I think that's part of the problem. It's a JPA that was formed by the city and the county. We have representatives on those seats, but it doesn't mean that the 2 board members that represent this board have the authority to designate projects. That should be coming back to this board for the direction. Much like I brought back when I sat on a JPA for Mountain Valley Emergency Services Agency, I brought back to this board the ambulance agreements that we were discussing and looked for their direction on which way to go. There was 2 other supervisors that were very involved in it, and it was followed out. That's what needs to be done. It needs to come back to the county seat for direction. In my opinion, the executive director of COG needs to keep that board. I've been to several of those meetings over there, and it doesn't inform them like our CAO or our staff does when something comes up to that board. That's not transparency. I'm sorry, but it's not. We have staff reports here all the time that explain everything to us, and then they're here present, and we can ask questions for if we have any. And we can ask them either here, or we can ask them before the meetings. We can pick up the phone and call them and ask them so we can understand what they're trying to say in their documents. That's, in my opinion, and from what I see at COG, doesn't happen. It needs to happen. That's part of the problem. Again, my notes here, the city and the county all agree that there should, including Tim, agrees there should be changes to this thing. It's an agreement between the city and the county. We've had the CAO speak to us this afternoon. We've had the department head, Mr. Garcia, speak to us this afternoon in agreement on this document that was produced by all of these people, including the city, and the changes that the city wanted. And we had George Ward, the planning director, all agree that we should adopt this. It was put together by them in many, many hours spent on this thing. A tremendous amount of staff time, and your tax dollars was spent on these changes that was wanted by this board, the city, and to just throw it away right now, I can't see doing it. It's the same thing in my mind of not throwing away the COG Valley Springs Community Plan. There was a lot of money spent and a lot of time and a lot of effort. I can't say that we need to just throw this document away and start over. It doesn't make sense to me. Mr. Tryon brought up the fact that it's a document that can have changes done to it. He's willing to. I don't mind changing to 6 months in dissolution if that's what we agree to. I don't mind changing back to 2, 2, 3, and 3. This, again, the 2, 2, and 1 was brought up what the city wanted. I mean, if we can get together, they have a meeting tonight. They're probably going to discuss this also. Well, I think it's on their agenda to discuss tonight. So if they're willing to change their views on that, I'm open to it. But I think, in my opinion, I agree that the projects, I don't want to digress by going back in history. I think Mr. Garcia is a very competent person and department head. He's brought in on his own accord and his staff millions of dollars into this county that hasn't been spoke about to pave roads that otherwise would not have been paved, and that's him. And he's got other counties' funds because he was on the ball for it. And the other counties were lacking in it. I've got several roads paved in my district that otherwise would not have been done, and one of them was Pettinger, and I've been, since the first day I was sworn in to this office, have been on Public Works to do something about Pettinger Road. Jamie knows this. It's been one of my, it got paved. It got paved because of due diligence by this man right here and his staff. Olive Orchard Road, that's another road that got paved We had an agreement with the developer, but because of what happened over the economy and developments and houses, he was unable to hold up his end of the bargain so far, but that road was in dire repair, need of repairs, and this man and his staff, and I want to thank his staff, and I want to thank him, diligently going out and finding the funds to pave that road. Those two roads from Highway 26 to Olive Orchard Road, to Burson Road, to Southworth Road, to Pettinger Road is a major thoroughfare. In the mornings, people going to Sacramento from Rancho or where have you, even Valley Springs area, take those shortcuts through those roads. They were horrendous roads. Anybody that's been on those roads know that. For the amount of traffic and the traffic studies that we conducted, they should have been widened, but we didn't get the funds to do that, but we've got them paved. And I thank their staff for that. And there's many other stories as a tone to here on this board of what the funds that this man has brought forth on his own and his staff to pave roads. So I have to say that he is very, very capable, and his staff, of delivering any project on any of the COG's agendas, any at all. I have full confidence of him and his crew doing so. And in what point do we say as a county that we've created this extension of ourselves that we have to fight them to get back our projects and go forward with them? It just does not make sense. We are the county seat. It's the county property. We should be able to say, we are going to do this project, and we do the project. We have capable personnel to do it. This man and his staff in a private firm. I would love to have this staff and this person in a private firm, because the type of person is very seldom do you run into where you just feed them. They'll go. All you got to do is feed them, and they'll just chew it up and they'll do it. They're willing to do it. They're out looking. It's very rare that you run into that type of person and that type of staff. And we lost one today due to retirement. So to say that the personnel is not there, I'm not seeing it. I think it's there. I can't speak about the past and what transpired then, but to say that they're not capable is just, you don't know what you're talking about if you say that. So I will say this. I am in agreement from what the staff gave to us. This is what they worked on. This is what the city and them came up with. And if that's the agreement that was forged by this group and it's recommended by staff, the CAO and the planning department, then I'm not going to argue with them. I'm in agreement if we need to fine-tune it, we can bring it here and meet with the city and fine-tune whatever they would like to see with it or what we would like to see with it. Like I say, the 6 months, I don't have a problem with that. If they want to go back to 2, and 3, I don't have a problem with that. So I'm in agreement with this, and I will be voting for it today. Thank you.
Rita, maybe I can just add one comment, since it's come up through here, and I didn't have a chance because I spoke first. It seems like there's a sort of big issue over Tom meeting with the city. I'm with Gary. I had very little input into this document. When I met with the city representatives, it was a consensus amongst all of us to recommend 3 changes to the proposed joint powers agreement. The first, so just for the public record, the first was that the public member term should be for 1 year, so that both parties, both entities are happy with the performance of the public entity. The second was that the executive director of the COG be an at-will position. every department head position in the county is an at-will position. Jeannie does not have a contract. She is an at-will employee. She is the highest appointed official in Calaveras County. And one of the reasons for that was that the executive director needs to know that he needs to make both entities happy. I mean, what we tried to do, as I stated in my comments, we tried to make it so that the city and the county are seamless and speak with one voice when it comes to COG issues. And so the second recommendation was to make the executive director an at-will position so that the executive director understands he has he can't just play votes. He's got to make both parties to the joint powers agreement happy with his performance. And the third was on the executive management committee. Just for clarification, since obviously Steve was not in that meeting, the executive management committee, as we, being the three of us, viewed it, I don't know what staff thought when they created it, it wasn't the executive management and what we did, it originally said high staff positions in the city and county will do this. And we said, no, we want it to be the city manager and we want it to be the CAO. We want it to be the highest position in the city and the highest position in the county. And it wasn't that we wanted this committee so much to just I mean, one of the functions clearly is to look at COG and say, is COG working? Is it working to the best interest of both entities that have created it? But second, and equally important, is we need communication between the city and the county. And we felt that having the CAO and the city manager be named would allow both those individuals to talk about what issues are, as much as anything, or what are the issues with the city council we're not aware of, what's the city issues with the board of supervisors that we're not aware of. It was basically to provide input beyond the performance of the COG. It was to provide a broader function than that, and that's why we changed it from high staff positions to the CAO and the city manager. And that was done for that purpose. And just an additional comment. It's always lousy to go first because then everybody else comments on you and you don't get to comment again. But I agree with Steve that, the COG has done, in my opinion, a fine job on raising money. That's not the issue. I totally agree with Steve. I totally agree with Steve that the county, I think that's what you said, the county should deliver the projects in the county, unless the county specifically says, no, we'd like the COG to deliver it. If I'm looking at Steve, he's nodding yes on both those. Well, that's what this document does. That's the operational aspects of this document. That and nothing more. And then basically the change in governance so that 2 county members or 2 city council members can never have both of them vote and lose to where one entity has no voice on the COG, like happened 2 or 3 months ago. I mean, you can't have that. I mean, that is not going to be a sustainable operation. If you have 2 board members vote one way and 2 city council members and 1 public member vote the other way, or vice versa, the 2, I don't get what I just said, but the other 2 public members vote one way with the city council and the other entity, public entity that's half of the joint powers agreement, votes the other way and has no voice and loses. I mean, you've got to do things that obviously have to include at least a majority, where you have to have at least 2 from one of the joint powers agreement and at least 1 more. And that's what 2, 2, and 1 requires. You'll never get a position again under the current governance where 2 board members or 2 city council members can be totally ignored. I mean, that is not going to sustain a joint powers agreement between 2 entities. So
Thank you.
I'm done.
Mr. Thomas?
Tom, I take it that you were on the short end of that vote?
Yes, I was.
Oh, okay.
I told you, it was Marita and 3 public members and 2 city council members and myself. And the 2 city council member vote and myself lost.
Elected members.
And this isn't a joint powers agreement between the city and the county. So
At that particular moment, that was the structure, so that's like changing the rule book in the middle of the World Series or something like that. So anyway, can somebody send out for pizza? I guess not. I don't have a whole lot to say about this, other than I hear a theme that I've heard from Mike Wietrich and other people on the board, that I don't think that it's urgent that we make a decision, final stamp of approval on this document today. There's on this old relief on the front page of the staff report, there's a third paragraph down that it says emphatically that staff has also provided the draft JPA and organization and procedures manual to the executive director of COG, and will work closely with COG staff to address their concerns and make necessary changes as needed to reflect state and federal laws and mandated activities. Did that happen?
Comments were provided to the county by the director of the COG. We worked through those comments. Changes were not made to the document based on those comments due to the content. One of them was dealing with additional incorporations. We felt that that was inappropriate to put in this JPA. There were other comments regarding that differed with the established practices from other COGs on the transition between a COG and an LTC, should that occur, whether or not there was an automatic transition of staff. No other RTPAs or an automatic transition of staff upon that dissolution of the RTPA. Comments dealing with at-will employees, whether or not sections were necessary or wordy. Again, we drew those sections from other COGs, other RTPAs, so we felt that the language was adequate and succinct and conveyed the direction from the board and the city. There was also concern about making the TAC a open agency or open committee.
Brown Act Committee.
Brown Act Committee, and the staff felt strongly that that needs to be an open process, open to the public and transparent, so that everyone can weigh in and monitor what goes on with their tax dollars. I can go through the list of comments if you wish, but we did take them into account, and we are committed to working with the COG on revisions to the OWP, or not the OWP, I'm sorry, the Operations and Procedures Manual. But again, that Operations and Procedures Manual was developed by taking what is currently the practice of the COG and putting it on paper, our current COG, and putting it on paper, and incorporating other practices by other COGs, other transportation agencies that work. So it was formalizing what we do now and adding some additional language to make it clearer, to make it more transparent, and to convey the wishes of the board and the city council.
But this statement here implies to me that there was an opportunity to work collaboratively. Maybe I'm misinterpreting what the intent of this sentence, but it sounds like to me that what had actually happened is that the document in its entirety was worked out between the city and county, and a copy of it was handed to the executive director, and you didn't like his comments, and so they weren't incorporated.
The comments that we received, that's fairly accurate. The comments that we received were contrary to the direction we received from the city and the county, or contrary to established COGs and RTPAs.
So you're not going to work closely with them?
If I could have just a point of clarification. At the last study session we had with the board directed staff to work with the city and the county and not to include the COG in the discussions. And so we didn't, at the direction of the board. As a courtesy, we felt we should at least give them the finished draft that was coming to you today for comment. But we acted as the board directed us to at that study session.
Jeannie, I would never say leave out an agency.
I'm just, it was a split vote.
You may have not voted that way, but it doesn't mean we didn't have
That's
3
correct.
votes. to go
That's
that way.
correct.
And I
It was a-
recall, we had 3 votes.
Yeah. So I just point of
Not work with
clarification.
the agency involved.
That was the vote.
Okay, all right, let's get back. Russ has the floor. Tom, Russ has the floor. Go ahead, Russ.
Okay. Sometimes I have a little maybe selective memory too, but I don't remember excluding or saying that we would not have the COG participate. But since this has been such a heated part of this discussion, the Arnold Rim Trail thing, there seems to be some sort of a disagreement about that. I remember specifically that we did have a 5-0 vote that it would be a county project. I'm hearing from Supervisor Toppinelli that it's proceeding as a COG project. Can I get an explanation of that? I just need to know.
Thank you, Supervisor Thomas. Yes, I would like to clarify, and I apologize if there's a misunderstanding and disagreement. My understanding of the action that the board took was to do 2 things. One was to approve the project as a county project and provide it support. And I questioned the minute order when it came out. The second part was to engage in dialogue with me consistent with the draft MOU that was presented to the county. And I have not had those discussions at this point to talk about any changes to the MOU. To clarify the process, as I mentioned during that public presentation, the Council of Governments was the administrating agency for the TE program. During that process, we sent out a memo, and this was my predecessor actually, to the CAO at the time, specifically asking the Public Works Department to bring that list of projects to the board for their support and possible sponsorship. And that never happened. The action that the Council of Governments took relative to this specific project was, again, in the absence of any public works, and this was before Tom was there, and it was just as I was inheriting these projects, but it was in the absence of any county participation or desire at that time to take those projects on. So again, the council filled a void, happily so, without any discussion. Now, subsequently, certainly there's been some discussion. In the meantime, given that direction, we have moved forward and received just recently what's called the E-76, which is an authorization to proceed, which in the strict sense authorizes us to move forward. Also in the meantime, in anticipation of receiving that E-76, we hired a consultant through a competitive process in full compliance with the federal regulations, and we got that in writing from Caltrans, and I'm going to use finger quotes, ready to issue a notice to proceed for that phase of the project. I have not done so. I am ready to have those discussions about the MOU. I understand completely where the county stands on that. However, the E-76 was issued to the Council of Governments. I am in the middle of trying to inquire as to whether or not that in fact can be transferred to the county. My preliminary indicators are the answer is no, and if that's the case, then the county would have to go through the hiring process of a consultant and back through the process to obtain the E-76. That's the status of the project. I'm ready to sit down and have those discussions. I did send out an invitation, and Ms. Boyce was invited, Mr. Garcia was invited. They respectfully declined.
I think that was just a timing issue,
Yeah,
Tim.
probably.
And
then I've also sent a subsequent invitation to just Tom, so he and I can sit down and try and work out these issues. But we have not issued a notice to proceed. We have a contract in place, and we're ready. And I think that Supervisor Callaway has expressed a desire to move the project forward. We have that same desire.
I just want to make one comment, if I can, on that. Tim, you have a board, okay, It's not Tim's decision. You neglected to bring this MOU to the board when those TE projects were being discussed on September 1st. You sat on this and did not bring it to your board for direction. That's the problem I'm seeing with what's happening. Tim is going off on his own and neglecting this board that's made up of the city and the county. And you can say it's a personal agenda. It's not a personal agenda. It's an operational procedure problem that I see. And to neglect to bring this to your board and tell them what the county has done is a gross neglect of your duties, if you ask me. If I was sitting on a board, I would be screaming at you, saying, what are you doing? And you sat on that, and you know you did.
And I did. You're right. I sat on that knowing that there were some discussions that hadn't taken place.
It was 5-0 here. What are you talking about? You could say, here's the agreement that the Board of Supervisors voted 5-0 and presented it to that board.
Okay,
You didn't. You
I'm
didn't.
sorry, if you have a performance appraisal you'd like to give Mr. McSorley, I recommend you.
I'm just trying to point out part of the problem that I see.
May I interrupt for a minute?
Sure.
Russ, are you done?
Oh, yeah, I'm not done, but
Tom,
He's not
please,
done, Tom.
post.
he can interrupt. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I'd just like to ask the Public Works Director for his comments on what the Executive Director said. It was very clear it was a 5-0 vote coming out of here. It's my understanding that we have people under contract also. We're doing the West Point bike trail, and we're doing other things. And this, the Arnold Rim Trail it would certainly be a natural fit to just include in those contracts. But please, give us your comments.
We did outreach to the COG immediately after the board took its action and requested meetings. Unfortunately, apparently the timing didn't work out on the COG's part as well. That was prior to the board meeting where the COG action took place. These, as far as the comments requiring a new E76 and issues regarding transfer of the project, no, we've dealt with Caltrans and CTC on this issue. And the way that these projects were approved as part of a block, there would be no issue in transferring those projects from the COG to the county for construction or for environmental or any case.
And that was a 5-0 vote of the board to do so. Is that
No, that's his comment. So what I heard you say, Tom, is that they will not allow it, or we
No,
have
will.
to
They
start?
will.
They
So
will.
we have to go through that whole
No.
process?
Caltrans staff and CTC indicates that the way that these projects were approved, there would not be an issue transferring these projects from the COG to the county to administer.
So you'll take the existing contract that was let and start it, or are you having to go out
It hasn't been
again?
approved by the COG.
I work at the direction of the board. If I'm given direction to proceed on this project, that's the direction I will take.
That's not my question. My question is, there's a contract let, we're ready to go. If the county takes it over, do you have to start that process again? Can you take ownership of that contract per Caltrans and the CTC?
The lead on the contract can be transferred. I'm sure that there's contract language that allows a change in the lead. The funding source remains the same. The lead agency changes. The county would like to review the contract to make sure that the contract language is adequate, and also that the funds allocated to that contract are appropriate.
How long would you anticipate that would take?
Contract review, a couple of days.
Well, the contract hasn't been awarded.
Yes, it
It has
has,
been
Tom.
awarded, but apparently a notice to proceed on that contract has not yet been issued. And that I would need clarification on. I think I recall an email stating that had occurred, but possibly that was for the other two projects.
Well, doesn't the COG board have to approve that?
We did, Tom.
That was on the COG agenda?
The one approving the contract, a long time ago, we approved that with the TE projects. So, I mean,
So
all
it's a
I know
package.
is that there is a pissing match between the county and the Council of Governments on this little project. All I want it to do is to be resolved and not wait another year.
All right,
And I guess
and
that's
if
why-
you're not embarrassed, anybody hearing this, by that last discussion, I don't know what it takes to shame us. This is a question of a conversation between two adult human beings, figuring out who's on first and going the heck forward. Don't hang up a project this tiny by some kind of, I don't know, what is it, folks? It's certainly not structural. It's certainly not...
It's not just this project, it's every T project except for the one for the city.
And it's the other projects.
And there's
It's the Valley
administration
Springs
costs
Community Plan
associated with all
project.
those.
It's all of them.
It's all of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we have this document in front of us. This document resolves all those issues. So if you don't like this conversation, then approve this document. That's what this document does, or we will have this discussion continually.
That's fine.
That's the truth of the
Okay,
matter.
Tom, fine.
must like
Tom,
Well, no,
fine.
I don't,
Mr.
but-
Thomas, did you have
not the right
anything else you
fix.
want to say?
Well, I certainly do. I'd like to give these agencies, the county and COG, an opportunity to see if they can work this, as a demonstration project, if they could work this out so that we can get the Arnold Rim Trail built without shedding blood over it. That'd be refreshing. I'm hung up on this issue about the 2, 2, and 1. I don't have a problem with the 2, 2, and 3. I think that is, on balance, it's a better idea than putting someone time after time, month after month, project after project, a public representative in the potential position of being pressured into making a decision and being his decision being scrutinized because of people's misunderstanding about what went into the deliberative process. So I'm inclined to keep it with the 2, 2, and 3.
Would you approve then what's in front of us with that amendment?
There's too much other that has come up that we've heard from people all around the room, including Tom Garcia and Tim McSorley, that we're in agreement that there needs to be some changes. So the document in front of us, I think, is on balance, it's pretty well done, pretty well thought out, but it may be a step too far. I would like to, I don't know, Tom, everybody appears entitled to their opinion, and
Yes, I
I'm
respect
expressing
your
mine.
opinion, but at some point we have to make a decision too. I mean, you can't just...
Doesn't have to be today, Mr.
I think you stole my words there. That's exactly what I wanted to say. That let's not be too quick on this. And I would be inclined. Or I want to state that I would rather than making the wrong decision today, I'd rather make the right decision at a future meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay.
You want a 2-week continuance for us?
Yes.
I would like to make my comments. Thank you.
You said you made them at the beginning. You
No, I
went
made
first.
some comments. Just wait, Tom. First of all, on Central Sierra Family Support, Steve and I were at the meeting Thursday, Friday, whenever, last week. 4 counties approved a new JPA agreement. 4 counties: Alpine, Tuolumne, Amador, and Calaveras. The changes were recommended by staff. They were reviewed by the Board of Central Sierra. They went to the respective county councils, CAOs, and respective boards for discussion. I think that process has been left out of here. I believe on the Organization and Procedures Manual, it is a working document for the COG, not a working document for the city and the county. I think the TAC should be involved in helping to formulate the Organization and Procedures Manual, and as Mr. Garcia wrote in his cover memo, will work closely with the COG to address their concerns. Not just, here it is, make some comments on paper, and we're not going to make any changes. I also strongly believe that when Mr. Tryon talked about he can meet with his constituents, this is a county-wide issue. It is not just a District 4 issue. And I would have very much liked to have been part of the discussions because I think some of my concerns could have been answered or could have had input, and I might have been voting on this JPA agreement today. I also think that the recommendation at the city council meeting was a recommendation from one city council member. I believe it had support from another. I'd have to go back and listen to the tape, but the direction from the city council was hopefully, because they couldn't mandate it, 2 members of the city, 2 members of the county agree. If this is a city-county document, then to me it's not a Brown Act violation, and Mr. Jones can stand to correct me. He said that wants in there that the executive director is an at-will employee. The executive director of the COG has a contract with the council. In that contract, it says he is an at-will employee. This is duplicative of that. It's already there. I think it's a sad commentary that we say that we're going to just transition to an LTC, assuming if we do, and we're going to forget about the staff of the COG. What does that say to those people who are working there, that we think of them as contributing members of county government, and I use that small c, small g, that, you know, I don't care what other COGs might say, that they can dump staff. I don't think that's who we should be as a community. And again, the Executive Management Committee, I don't think we need to mandate that there be an Executive Management Committee. If the CAO and the city manager want to talk together, there's nothing stopping them from doing it. It's just another layer. So, I'm not going to be redundant on some of the other things that have gone on. I really do not like that the Arnold Rim Trail project is being held hostage.
It's not being held hostage. The board gave a 5-0 direction as to what should happen. It's not being held hostage unless it's being done so by the COG.
Tom, no, it isn't.
That's the simple truth of the matter.
No, it is not the truth of the matter. No, let's, all right, into that conversation.
Okay, and I want to make one comment, and that's on the 2-2 meeting that the city council brought up. The 2 of their members, their 2 COG members meet with our 2 COG members. That was brought to the city council, and that city council voted on it 5-0 to do that. If you're suggesting that you and Tom, you weren't part of it, it was never brought back to this board for us to vote on what 2 to meet with them, or if we wanted 3 to meet with them or whatever. So if you and Tom, just on their suggestion going and meeting, they voted on it and got 5-0. It was never brought to this board.
Okay, well, I still wasn't involved, and they haven't.
Well, let me comment again on that. Since
Tom.
You won't let it go. I want to clarify it. Number one is you say, oh, we should have had a meeting. We did have a meeting. We had a study session with the city council. All 5 of us were here. All 5 city council members were here.
And 3.
3 council members.
Oh, 3 council members. Okay, but it was a study session with the city council, and it was duly noticed, and it was held. And that was the countywide negotiations. It makes no sense, Marita, to have the city council decide who the board's representatives will be. Any more than it makes any sense for the Board of Supervisors to dictate to the city who the city representatives will be.
Well, that's in the JPA.
If the city council wanted to meet with 2 county board members to discuss this, then it appropriately should come to the board, and the board should appoint 2 members to meet with the city council.
That didn't happen